It's gonna be great. So we'll let everybody get logging in here as they move from their morning meetings into what will be the highlight of their day with Ali Goodwin. But hey, you know what I want to talk about? Oh, we got a couple seconds here. I saw a picture of you having caught a fish, and I think most people that have known me long enough know that I like my fishing. And it wasn't a very big fish that I saw,
Your fish
but
far outweigh my
it
fish.
was a fit. It was a fish. So tell me, like, you do this on the reg, or is that like a one-off AI generated picture that you sent me?
If it were AI, I would have done myself a lot more
You
favors.
would have done more than
Fish.
the 4 ounce fish I saw on the end of the hook.
Yeah, no, we have a small pond at the house I grew up with, so mostly bluegill and crappie. There's a few bass in there, but yeah, nothing that I'm gonna mount.
Was that what they call a minnow, or was it something different than that?
That was your fish's food.
Oh yeah, it was what they call cut plug. That you cut the head off and put it on a hook and fish it.
Yeah.
Um, it looked like a perch, maybe. It was a crappie.
I think what I sent you was a crappie. I forget what picture
Crappie.
it was, but I think it was a crappie.
Do you eat it?
I did
A
not
little
eat
pan
that
fry.
one. He was barely a fish stick. Yeah, that would have
uh,
been more juice, less juice than was worth the squeeze on that guy. But yeah,
well, you gotta,
especially like early springtime when it's mushroom season, morel season. And
you know,
so hunting morels and then having fried fish, that's like the ultimate Southern Indiana dinner.
that's good.
Every
You're an
outdoor
outdoor girl
day.
though, right? Like you're kind of an outdoor adventurous hiker. Yeah.
Yeah,
So if you ever got lost, you could save yourself on crappie and morels.
hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. All right, well, let's get this party started. Welcome to the August Fireside Chat Series. Today we got Ali Goodwin. It's going to be fantastic, you guys. So hold on to your hats. We're going down the PBM road here, which I think it's been a couple years since we've had any pharmacy related conversations. So I figured we were due, but we're going to have Ali go through all this with and Lindsay, if you want to kick us forward a slide, I'm going to give my version of an introduction here. But Ali, I was fortunate enough, I actually presented with her um, last year, 2 years
Yeah,
ago.
last
Yeah,
year.
it was a Health Rosetta event, maybe. No,
Yeah.
probably the best event or session of that event, I'm guessing, because of the
Oh no.
RDP and PBM content that was displayed out there. But no, that's where I got to know her. It was fun. I thought we did a good job on it. And I think our guests enjoyed it. And I was impressed with her knowledge base. And we've crossed paths a few other times with events and networking things that are out there. And I've always appreciated what she has done and the way that she handles herself in terms of communicating products, but having a good time while doing it. So happy to have you on the show today. I'm not going to read whatever's in front of me. That's too much. So hopefully, if people aren't listening to me, they're reading through your phenomenal resume and skill sets. But I'll let you show that here as we go through the slides. So, Ali, welcome.
Thank you, Heath. I'm
You're
very
on.
glad to be here.
All right, let's go, Lindsay. Drum roll.
All right, so I'm just gonna dive right in. You know, the whole notion of this fireside chat is just the idea of, how to make your pharmacy benefits work for you. There's a lot going on out there. There's a lot of noise in the marketplace, but it can be a pretty simple thing to deal with as long as you are staying aware, knowing what you have and what you are getting. So, and we'll go into some more stuff as well, but truly, if you know what's going on, you're ahead of a lot of folks. So, where I'm kicking this off at is the PBM ownership and business models. As far as business models go, it's pretty straightforward. Most PBMs either refer to themselves as traditional or transparent slash pass through. And several of them will even offer both of those models. And we know that the traditional guys, they focus on the big rebates and pharmacy discounts in order to achieve cost savings, often because they own those pharmacies. And there's usually a very low or even $0 admin fee, meaning that they are far less transparent about how they make their money. And then you get to that pass-through or transparent model. And really, in simplest terms, those PBMs are just passing through all of their pricing, discounts, and rebates back to the plan sponsor, allegedly. However, in those pass-through models, there's a lot more that you need to consider and be aware of. Obviously, I'm a very big advocate for the pass-through and transparent model, being with TrueScripts, who I like to say we were transparent before transparent was cool. That's always what I'm going to advocate for. How can you do better if you don't know what the stakes are? So um, then that's where kind of the ownership piece comes into play. Who owns your PBM? Who does your PBM own? And how can that impact even the simplest of processes, programs, et cetera? So we'll start with the first, who is your PBM owned by? All of the big PBMs are carrier owned, making them kind of, just another profit center within that broader insurance ecosystem. So carriers, they will typically bundle the medical and the pharmacy together, which makes it really difficult for employers to get a true line of sight into their drug costs. Outside of the carrier owned, many PBMs are backed by private equity or venture capital. And that's not always a bad thing. I'm not here to run that down. P and VC is good. It helps a lot of businesses get up and running. However, when a PBM is backed by P or VC monies, that business model tends to tilt in specific ways. So PE or VC owned PBMs are often, they're built with an exit strategy in mind, either whether that's a sale, a merger, IPO. Essentially, that primary goal is rapid growth and maximizing enterprise valuation, which can push that PBM to prioritize short-term margin over long-term alignment with those client goals. So just a conflict of interest there. And on the other side of that, who does your PBM own? A big focus there is pharmacy ownership by the PBMs. That creates a lot of outside incentives, whether that's stacking formularies, limiting pharmacy network options, etc. And it's a big one. When you look at the impact that pharmacy ownership can have on things within the PBM ecosystem, look at those, like just the simplest form of a PBM's responsibilities, such as formulary management or pharmacy network management. If your PBM owns a pharmacy, they can be incentivized to manipulate both of those tasks. So for pharmacy network could be limited because the PBM wants to steer members to their pharmacies. If the pharmacy network is limited, that could also limit patient access to care. Not so great of a thing. And then also the PBM could be incentivized to stack their formularies with higher cost medications because they make more when those drugs are filled at their pharmacies, whether that's specialty, mail, whatever. And there was actually a study done recently that kind of shows that progression of PBM revenue sources over time. And so 10 years ago, rebates were by far the biggest profit driver for PBMs. But everyone started paying attention to that. Everyone was shining the light under that rock and demanding more transparency. So do you think that PBMs just said, okay, fine, you got us, and reduce their profit margin, say we won't do that? No, not a fat chance. They just transitioned those revenue streams to more covert avenues, with today's the biggest and fastest growing profit center for PBMs is pharmacy ownership. I think that shift really just underscores what a massive conflict of interest that is. So when PBMs can retain some of the rebates and fill those drugs at the pharmacies they own, it's a double bingo for them. They're not incentivized to drive members to the lower cost options through alternative funding programs, things of that nature, when they stand to make so much money by keeping things as is.
All right. I got to ask, what is TrueScripts ownership model then?
Yeah, so true on the pharmacy ownership piece, that is one of that was just a core pillar of our foundation. Our owners always said, if we are going to be truly transparent by whatever definition that means, we make that definition to be conflict free, free of misaligned incentives. So we've always vowed that we will not own pharmacies. So we do not have, not ever, will never will. And then as far as who owns us, we have always been independently owned and operated up until a few years ago, where our owners actually announced that we were transitioning to an ESOP model. So today we are employee owned, which is just phenomenal. And I think that just plays into the impact that we have, that, the success of TrueScripts is solely dependent on the success of our clients. And so every team member has a vested interest in seeing out the success of our clients in TrueScripts. So it's yeah, that one's pretty cool.
Yeah. And even more important than that is where are you getting the art for your presentation there? Because I mean, this guy, he looks stunned that
Yeah, I had to tell Lindsay when I sent these over. Cheesy stock photography is just like it's a cheap thrill for me. So apologies in advance, everyone, for
there's more to come.
the cheesy
All right.
images that you're gonna see here. And I'm not someone,
Uh,
I like to PowerPoint people to death. So we needed a space filler down there.
yeah, no, he looks excited to be here. Hey, I also forgot to mention to the audience during my introduction. We highly encourage people to ask questions here. So there's a Q&A button on your Zoom browser. Feel free to click on that and ask questions for Ali as we go through this. So
Yeah. Thanks for that. Okay, so the access to data and financial information. And a lot of this, you guys, it isn't, these aren't new concepts, but oh my gosh, are they important. If you are going to spend less or do better, you have to know how much you are currently spending and what you are spending it on, what's going on inside of your plan. Also, for the clients, as the fiduciary for your plan, you are responsible for ensuring the prudent oversight of all plan assets and expenditures. And that duty in and of itself requires full access to claims data and plan expenses. Thankfully, under the CAA and ERISA, plan sponsor, self-funded plan sponsors are given explicit and legal rights to this data. So ever you are having difficulty obtaining this, reach out. I've got some really good and proven language that just identifies every reason that they have to give this to you. Let's see. Next, the contract readability. And guys, and even if you do have the data, sometimes it's not enough to just have it in front of you. You need to be able to dig in and understand really what you're looking at. And a good example of that I can give, when you are going through these RFIs or spreadsheeting exercises, everything isn't always apples to apples. For example, when we go through a claims repricing exercise, we at TrueScripts, we are always going to ask for NDC level data along with that particular claims date of service and that pharmacy information, because that same one drug could have many different NDC versions. And we know that drug costs, they vary from day to day and pharmacy to pharmacy. So we want to make sure that when we are repricing it, we're saying, hey, if you would have filled these exact same claims at this exact same pharmacy on that exact same date, here's what it would have cost with TrueScripts. Whereas other PBMs might say, hey, yeah, just tell us what the drug was, and they're going to use their lowest cost NDC, their best pharmacy contract rate, and that is going to wildly overinflate the savings, and just not really give you an accurate picture of what's happening or what may happen with that PBM who's trying to win your business. And then
Is there a way? Is there a way to avoid that misrepresentation during the RFI process?
just asking question, digging in and saying, asking for that level of data. And then also, I think ensuring that your PBM isn't double dipping across programs. You want to make sure that rebate impact is being accurately calculated. If you are going the patient assistance route or international, you lose rebates. That's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of times those programs will deliver a far better cost than any rebate would, but it needs to be impacted in there as well. I've seen some reprices where rebates are still figured in, even though the PBM was also assuming like a 100% conversion rate for some of those alternative funding methods, which we know isn't realistic either. If you're looking at a drug that has a 300% FPL, the federal poverty level for PAP, we know that not everyone is going to qualify for that. So just asking the questions, being aware truly is, and if you don't know all of the questions that you should ask, reach out. These are things that we go through every day. I have a list of things. We know how we stack up when we go through these RFI and spreadsheeting processes. And unfortunately, the less transparent you are, oftentimes the better you can look on a sheet of paper. But a lot of times, and it really comes down to this last bullet point here, is that contract readability. That's just a great way to stay aware by understanding what your PBM is offering. And that won't take care of all of the potential pitfalls in an RFI, but it'll give you a good look at, a good look under the hood. Especially, we just talked about these business models. Well, even a transparent model doesn't mean everything. Many PBMs are transparent in that their contract tells you that they are going to engage in spread pricing. It's just maybe buried in a complex and misleading sentence structure on page 76 of that contract. So you need to look for definitions, and when in doubt, just ask all the questions. Ask the stupid questions, ask the hard questions, ask it all.
Is is there a telltale or a way to guarantee transparency when you're reviewing these contracts, or what's the best way to get to the end result?
Unfortunately, not really, because transparency doesn't just have one standard definition. Everyone kind of has their own definition of it. And more so than transparency, these plan sponsors really need to ensure that their contract is giving them full power to really maintain and flex their fiduciary duties. So you'll see a lot of PBMs tout that they are fiduciary. But again, what does that truly mean? Because up until recently, PBMs and TPAs, they were not ruled to be legal fiduciary entities under ERISA. So there was really no meat or legal backing to those claims of transparency and fiduciary. Now, granted, some states have begun to introduce a new fiduciary standard for some of those entities like TPAs and PBMs that administer health plans on behalf of employers, which is awesome. That's great. We think that every PBM should be acting in a fiduciary manner. But even prior to the new legislation, what TrueScripts has done to provide assurance and peace of mind is we put in our contract and what we call an affirmative covenants and transparency commitments clause. It's a mouthful, I know. But in short, it just contractually obligates us to operate in a fully disclosed and mission aligned manner for our clients. So we're just stating right there in black and white We will not own pharmacies. We will not play any funny money games, or really just deviate from our commitments. And we outline those commitments right there. And if we do deviate from them, the client has full rights to fire us, no strings attached. We often joke that we are the easiest PBM to fire. But that's how it should be. I mean, if it's a true partnership, both sides have to be happy. We're not going to hold anyone hostage to being our client, you know? But okay, Lindsay, if you will switch to the next slide, please.
Oh yeah, the art, the photos are getting better. Like,
Told you. That cheesy stock photography just gets me. And this guy, you can clearly see, is taking action. So, and what we mean by that is just pulling all the levers. If you are self-funded, the reason a plan sponsor would go self-funded is to have all of that beauty of being self-funded, being able to pull all of those levers. So if you make the switch to self-funded, but for some reason stay carved in, you are missing out on all of that. Everything that you can do to help control costs for your plan, all those levers. And so the first and most, I guess, kind of standard one here is the formulary management. And it's simple, just you want your PBM to chase the right drugs, not rebates. You need this formulary management to be active and flexible. You need the PBM keeping tabs on everything that goes on in the wild world of big pharma, because holy cow, is it volatile and ever changing. You need a P&T committee that consistently monitors everything that's going on, whether that's new drugs to market, expiring patents, maybe a new generic that's coming out, or even some of those, what we like to call them dumb drugs, which a good example, Duexis was always the example here. I think Duexis finally went away. So now Vimovo is a new one, where Vimovo is just naproxen and Nexium, two over-the-counter drugs that might cost $50 a month, but some drug manufacturer mixed the two together, slapped a patent on it, and said $3,000 a month. That's insane. You need someone as the middleman to say, hey, and doctors aren't pharmacists. So it's kind of crazy. They had some cute girl come in and say, hey, here's, this drug Vimovo, here's all these case studies that work so well, and they're prescribing it, maybe not knowing that it costs $3,000. And patients don't know that it's just naproxen and Nexium. So they're going in when they hear $3,000 a month, breaking down in tears. Well, you need someone as a middleman to say, hey, this is completely unnecessary. And that's what PBMs can and should be doing. We are middlemen. So rather than taking this spot in the middle to profit off of patient needs, why don't we help bridge those gaps in patient care? And not to, I'm leery of even saying the word GLP-1 because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but active formulary management, it also just means working with clients to develop a plan design that's best suited to them. And maybe that even is on the GLP-1 side of things. How do you want to cover them? Is the PBM also, are they putting nice PA parameters in place if you're only covering them for diabetes? Granted, if you do want to cover them for some weight loss purposes, is there a wellness program to support potential coverage of those GLP-1s for weight loss? We have one that can be used as a form of step therapy or prior authorization of sorts if desired. It's just all about meeting the client where they're at. And that flows nicely into the pharmacy network management piece as well. We've already talked a little bit about that, but your PBM should really be able to leave that door wide open to leverage pharmacy contracting strategies as a means of cost savings. And well, let me caveat that. And no, this doesn't mean Caremark simply steering all members to their CVS pharmacies. What I'm talking about here is really maintaining an open network, but having the ability to kind of cherry pick pharmacies based on their best cost for particular drugs. Because as I mentioned, drug prices vary from pharmacy to pharmacy. but sometimes that means helping to steer members, whether that's to a low cost generic at Mark Cuban's cost plus pharmacy, or a stateside specialty pharmacy that we've negotiated good pricing with. And there are some states that have implemented anti-steerage laws, and so that can impact pharmacy management, but steerage can be a good thing if it's done for the right reasons. And if there are any lawmakers on here, I would encourage lawmakers to research that, because just doing a blanket anti-steerage law can also be harmful. There was a few years ago, Tennessee implemented some blanket anti-steerage language, and it was intended to prevent, the likes of the big three from pushing or steering members just to the pharmacies that they own for profiteering purposes. However, that language also prevented the good guys from steering members to pharmacies for cost savings measures. Sorry, and another a good example was Georgia recently implemented their House Bill 946, I think, don't quote me on that, but their anti-steerage language was a little different in that it spoke directly to affiliate pharmacies only, meaning a PBM could help steer members toward partnering pharmacies, just not those what they had investment or ownership in. And so, and I know that law, it impacted the way that some PBMs would typically have deployed their programs. And what I mean by that is, for instance, there was one PBM in particular, their copay card, their copay maximization program was dependent upon the member transitioning that prescription to the PBM's pharmacy once they were enrolled in that copay program. And so Georgia's House bill hindered their ability to run that program in Georgia. But I am not a legal expert, so we'll pull back out of that rabbit hole and move on to to biosimilars. Trust me, if you guys take legal advice from me, you will end up in jail. I know.
So there's a question that came out. Are you going to the biosimilars, or are we still on pharmacy network management?
Biosimilars, but if there's a question on pharmacy network, we can stick around on that.
Well, there's one that came in from the audience. It may be a titch out of order, but we might as well address it while it's fresh.
Sure.
How do you guys handle the mail order meds?
We have a mail order pharmacy network. We also offer 90-day at retail. We don't own any of those pharmacies. If mail order is an option that the member wants to, go down, that it's open to them. There are several mail order pharmacies in our network. We'll help them get enrolled. But again, we are big advocates for using your pharmacy and pharmacists as a healthcare resource. So also offering that 90-day at retail is a good way to keep members in front of their pharmacists as well, if they choose that route.
And as long as we're still on the pharmacy network side, and this may be a bigger thing, but do you see anything coming down the pike in terms of changes or impacts that are going to take place that affect the PBM space? I mean, there's change in administration. You've got, I think, what seems like a lot more focus on this area, as one of the biggest cost drivers. What's coming?
Yeah, well, I mean, even look at what Arkansas did, where they are trying to implement some legislation where PBMs cannot own pharmacies in their state. And so actually CVS was looking at closing all of their pharmacies in Arkansas. So that tells you how much they are making on the PBM side of things. And there's a lot of money to be made there, and everyone is becoming very aware of that. So I don't know if the Arkansas bill will go through. I mean, we know how deep Big Pharma has their hands in everything, so I would be shocked. But people are starting to look and pay attention. But as far as things coming down the pipeline, that biosimilars, that it's a huge one. And that ties in nicely with the formulary management and pharmacy network management piece, because of how PBMs can and should be leveraging these new biosimilar options. So on the formulary management side, I think many PBMs had initially insisted on keeping drugs, the originator drugs like Humira and Stelara, at the forefront of their formularies because of reasons like large rebate amounts. But let me say this, wanting to keep those drugs, we'll just pick on Humira and Stelara, on any preferred formulary is because of a perverse incentive. I can't speak for everyone, but at TrueScripts, we've developed a really strong biosimilar strategy by working with a partnering pharmacy. Again, going back to that open pharmacy networking management strategy piece. And we can offer these biosimilars at a flat, low cost. So when you're looking at Humira, which is typically $7,000 a pop, we can get the Euflyma biosimilar for $800 flat. Doesn't matter what your household size or income is, isn't contingent upon anything. $800 for everyone. It is citrate and nitrate free, just like Humira. Phenomenal deal there. And then more recently was the launch of Stelara's biosimilar. So Stelara, you're looking at a price point of around $26,000. Granted, it has a hefty rebate. So a lot of PBMs would say, we're going to keep that on as a really good rebate. You're right. At one point it had a rebate of around $12,000. So let's just call it $14,000 for Stelara. Our biosimilar strategy for Stelara's biosimilar, $1,200 after rebate. So when you are looking at $1,200 to $14,000, no argument. I don't care if that rebate was $20,000. There's a need to be strategic here, and there's a lot you can do, and there's a lot more biosimilars in the pipeline. So that's something that we'll continue to monitor, and we've had a ton of impact so far, and have even seen some groups start to implement some mandatory step therapy of biosimilars before getting to one of the originator products. $26,000 claim that's hitting your plan is just not something that you can continue to ignore. Another fancy bell and whistle, PGX or pharmacogenomics. So and I don't know who all on here is familiar with PGX, but it is said that I think they say around like 95% of people have at least one genetic variant that impacts their medications or the way they metabolize those medications. So a PGX test, it's a simple, you do a mouth swab, send it off to the lab. It comes back with all of this information about how your body will respond to certain medications, or if it will respond to those medications at all. Sometimes the medication just won't work for you. And sometimes it could have a completely negative response, an adverse drug reaction, which, that goes down the whole line of medical costs associated with that. But there are several PBMs that offer PGX testing. Just make sure you're not just checking a box with it, though. Be strategic about it. Maybe rather than rolling it out to the entire employee population, target those members who are most likely to be impacted. So cardiovascular and mental health drugs are some of the biggest hitters. And then be sure also that your PBM with this program, they're offering support afterwards. So for TrueScripts, we have PGX certified pharmacists that will go through these test results with the member, let them know, go through the report drug by drug. What does all of this mean? And then also offering clinical decision support to that member's treating provider. So that's huge. And honestly, it's just like, I feel like everyone should be doing this. If you can do a mouth swab and it says, hey, this drug will not work for you, why go through the trial and error of it? But so that's kind of a new thing we had for us. But I'll move on to the next bullet here, the lowest hanging fruit of them all, and the thorn in everyone's side: specialty drugs. So we all know it's definitely a growing area of concern for a lot of plans. It's something that it cannot be avoided or ignored. If you don't have a specialty drug hitting your plan right now, you are one of the lucky ones. But I would not just bank on holding out on that luck. So what are you gonna do about it? Well, a lot of PBMs, outside of the big guys, which they just leverage the pharmacies that they own. A lot of PBMs will use a carve out or bolt on strategy, and so that which they will just apply a blanket exclusion to specialty drugs and then use a specialty bolt on vendor to pursue alternative funding. And there's a couple of potential issues with that. And since the industry is so hot and heavy on compliance these days, I'll start there. Um, so actually, let me just kind of lay this out in a real life case scenario. Let's say that Heath, you and we're both taking the drug Enbrel. We call into our PBM and are told, sorry, specialty drug, we don't cover specialty drug.
What is, I don't know. What's my drug for?
Oh, Enbrel, you have arthritis.
No, my thumb does hurt.
Well, you are old now, so.
I got a little older yesterday. Thank you for that.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
So since and I don't know if I have arthritis, probably a dirt bike wreck or something, because I'm not old. So anyways, we're both we're both taking Enbrel. We call into our PBM, they say, sorry, we don't cover specialty drugs. You need to call our specialty drug vendor. So well, now we're already we're kind of confused and frustrated. Why do we have to call so many different numbers? But anyways, we call them. I call first. Congrats, Allie. You meet the FPL and you qualify for patient assistance. You call in. They say, sorry, Heath, your household income is too high. You got to call your PBM back. So now you've kind of got this scenario where you call your PBM back, and in order to receive any form of financial support on your Enbrel, that would be through the form of a copay card, your employer needs to make an exception of coverage to bring the Enbrel back onto the plan so you can get copay card funding. Now you have this kind of reverse scenario of discrimination where you, as a more highly compensated individual, have a level of coverage that I do not. Not to mention a potential stop loss violation as well, because the plan said, hey, specialty drugs aren't covered. So a lot going on there, and that's kind of, some, hopefully putting it into a real life scenario like that is more helpful, but it's just something that I think a lot of people think about. And so being able to bypass those potential compliance pitfalls and go after all forms of financial assistance is huge. The specialty drugs are out of control. There are financial assistance options out there. You've got to be able to maximize those and stay out of the headlines while you're doing it, because everyone's shining the light on PBMs right now. So next bullet, international sourcing. We all know drugs in the US are expensive. Enter the most favored nation drug pricing executive order. But anywho, while some folks might consider that a gray area, the fact of the matter is that we have the ability to source the same drugs from the same manufacturer, same distributor, with the same FDA guidelines at a fraction of the cost. Recently, I was looking at, I think it was Bimzelx, which we could get stateside at around $5,000 post rebate, or we could source it from Canada, exact same drug, coming to you in the mail just as it would, even if it was stateside, for $2,000. So less than half the cost. It's something that I strongly encourage plans to consider. It's not for everyone, but it's a really great option when it is available. And then 340B, that's just another great arrow to have in the quiver, especially when PAP is not an option. And so I know 340B is kind of a blanket term, and PBMs tend to have different versions of their 340B offerings. So I can't speak to all of those. I know they'll kind of tend to define it differently. But for TrueScripts, what we did, especially in light of it was really the Humira, Skyrizi, and Rinvoq when they were losing PAP. We partnered with a 340B hospital entity, and just in simplest terms, we partnered with them to extend their drug pricing to members. Those members also receive medication therapy management by that 340B pharmacist. So it's just awesome. And it's not, our 340B program isn't up and running in every state just yet. But even so, that program last year saved like $4.3 million on just under 1,500 claims. So that's like an average savings of over $2,800 a claim. So it's just it's a great avenue to explore.
Are there other ways that a PBM can help out in the 340B space?
Definitely. And actually, that ties in perfectly to the first my first bullet on the next slide. So Lindsay, if you'll, yeah.
Hey,
So,
before you answer mine, there's another one on. Is
okay.
there any 340B running in Montana, or when will there be?
Sorry, it was Montana.
Montana.
Montana is not yet on our list. It is on the list that we hope to have. There's about 10 on there, 10 states that we expect to have up and running prior to 1/1. So just for everyone else's knowledge, the current states that our 340B program is up and running in are Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Colorado, Wisconsin, Arizona, Michigan, Minnesota, and Kentucky. And like I said, we have a couple handfuls that are in process. We're kind of at the mercy of each state. The 340B hospital and the 340B pharmacist have to get licensed in each state. So we're at the mercy of, every state has different rules and regulations. So we're just waiting on them to get all the licensing to go through.
All right. Sorry for the
No worries.
disruption there.
No. The question that you asked on, I believe, are there other ways a PBM could help support a 340B hospital? Yeah, when you're talking about these partnerships, it's just when you think of all the players that sit at the health plan table, it's not just about how great everyone is on their own. This whole there's no I in team, but it's really about how well you're working with everyone else at the table to move towards that common goal. So Heath, for that question you just asked, like, yes, a PBM could support a 340B hospital by helping to maybe stand up or enhance their underutilized 340B programs. Also, if there's any healthcare entity that maybe has an in-house pharmacy, the PBM can and should be able to help drive utilization of that pharmacy. Because remember, when you're not conflicted with your own pharmacy ownership interest, you have no problem helping clients maximize revenue through use of their own pharmacy. And that's a revenue generator for them. So, your PBM should absolutely be helping these healthcare entities enhance the use of their services. Now, when you're looking at how everyone else piecemeals together in the health plan, we're often asked about, our stop loss and TPA partners. And, as far as these other players on the court, they have to play well together too. So stop loss carriers, for example, they will oftentimes provide decrements for when a PBM is in place that has, that proven history of mitigating those risky, high cost drugs. And we've got a really good history of combating lasers, and that means something in the stop loss world. So those decrements are huge, and that's an awesome way to play with one of those other components there. But I think oftentimes probably the number one question we are asked by brokers are, or one of the top questions at least, which TPAs do you like? And, we're integrated with 70 plus and technically agnostic, but by golly, do we have preferences? So, and truly, I mean, to be most effective, we need a good TPA partner to play ball with us and adopt our programs. And, we also really like when they pay their bills, but really, playing ball on things like, so we can do things like successfully manage J codes, which is also a really great thing about having a solid RBP partner, which, if y'all don't know one, I might know a good one. But, good PBMs and good RBP vendors, we're both obviously, we're obviously focused on cutting costs and keeping things transparent. And, the PBM, obviously, we are helping guide members to the affordable prescription options while the RBP is tackling the high medical cost. So we kind of complement each other in that sense. And then when we pair up, we can share data, align on strategy, and just really create this smooth experience for the plan and the member. And then also on the J code side of things, that strong RBP partner, someone like 6 Degrees, we can really, they partner with us to help steer the J codes. Because if you're going to make a J code transition, we need them. They'll help us steer to lower cost sites of care, even help with getting the medications through more affordable procurement channels. Much better than a TPA that's maybe using a carrier network. Those carrier networks are oftentimes what make J code management a little more difficult. So, guys, really, if we kind of just look back and recap everything, if you're just in this pretty small nutshell of everything we just covered, if you just stay aware, take action, and leverage those strong partnerships, your prescription benefit success will take care of itself. Easy peasy, right, Heath?
Easy peasy. No, I mean, whether you're a PBM or RVP or you name your flavor, I think having a good working relationship with all the different entities that service that plan is incredibly important. So
It is. I have so many
concur.
partners who, they have, well, this vendor I really like, and I really like this vendor, and okay, but that's great. Well, how well do all of them work together? It's important. It's got to be a
It
well-oiled
is.
machine.
There you go. A couple questions have come in. One going back to the 340B from Jackie Lynch. Hi, Jackie. Did I understand that correctly that 340B entity is able to allow their 340B pricing for a commercial employee employer through your PBM?
Correct. And we can, feel free. I think Heath will provide my contact information here, but yeah, 340B is a rabbit hole in and of itself. So feel free to reach out to me and we can visit that rabbit hole together.
All right. So I'm going to let you handle this one as you see fit. I'm not gonna force you to answer it, but if you do, the anonymous attendee is going to appreciate your candid response. But which other firms does TrueScript consider as their competition with similar value propositions? And what makes TrueScript stand out? I'll pause there.
Okay, nice. Well, we're gonna obviously the big guys are competitors. They hold 80+% of market share. So we're always trying to take business from them. But when you're looking in this transparent pass-through bucket, there's a lot of good guys out there. And it kind of sucks that we're all fighting over a small piece of the pie. It'd be great to focus on ways to work, together to take more business from the big three, big five. 7, whatever. But in our space, we come up quite. Smith is a good one. We come up a lot against, I hear Lavinity quite a bit, Drexy. There's a lot of players in this space. What we do to set ourselves apart, I think it really comes down to one of my favorite alliterations, and we'll just go, saving, security, and service. So PBMs for the most part have the same roles and responsibilities. So it's not necessarily about what you are doing differently, but how you are doing it differently. And so when you're looking at some of these programs, there are some things that we are truly, the way we are applying them is different. Our specialty care program, it truly unique in the marketplace, on the way that our SPD language is crafted and the way that we're able to deploy this program. So that savings piece, we always are going to go, we have a lowest net cost philosophy, and we have the ability to pull all of these levers and do so in a way that we can cherry pick which lever is right for this particular drug and this particular patient scenario. So just maintaining that ability to be flexible, always going after that lowest net cost on the savings side. On the security side, that compliance piece is so big. And again, going back to the staying aware, our SPD language is longer than our contract. Our contract is 9 pages long. It is straightforward so that you know what you're getting, what you're signing into, what you're paying for, and where you're going to get for that payment. And truly, it just makes such a big difference. And the SPD language is longer than the contract because there's so much that goes into keeping everything compliant. This is such a cat and mouse game. And our founders, one of which is an ERISA attorney, we've just done a phenomenal job of staying ahead of that cat. And so a lot of times when we talk about our innovation, people think technology. We are so innovative in our language and able to be super creative there and just ahead of that curve to keep everyone secure and compliant. And the service piece, I know service can be such a trite concept to sell. However, with TrueScripts, and we truly just go above and beyond. Our tagline is amazing care, but what that means to us is that this amazing care starts from within. The culture of TrueScripts is unlike anything I've ever experienced. We were voted the #1 best place to work in Indiana 3 years running. We just have this tight-knit community inside with the idea that you can't pour from an empty cup. All of this amazing care that we deliver starts from within our walls. And there's a lot that goes into that. I'll give you one stat, just so I'm not spewing the warm and fuzzies, but we have a 99% one ring response rate, meaning, over the last 4 years, we've achieved a 99% success rate of when a member or client calls into TrueScripts, their call is answered on the first ring of the phone 99% of the time, which is just unheard of.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think I called you one time and it took a couple attempts. Are you not a part of that
That was my
statistic?
cell phone and I hit ignore.
Oh, okay. Just my feelings are hurt based on the 99% stat I just heard, but okay. All right. What else we got? I think that's the end of the questions. Anybody else have anything? Kick it in. Also, you got Allie's contact information on the screen. We're getting close to the end of the hour here, but you got anything you want to leave everybody with, like Allie's words of wisdom in the PBM space, or?
No, like I said, staying aware and taking action. And a lot of times, it's easy to wrap it up into those few bullet points. Once you start digging in, you'll have questions inevitably, as you should. Ask all the questions. And if you don't know which questions to ask, reach out. I have good language to help gear you with, to go out into the marketplace. Our team is really good. I won't just try to sell you TrueScripts. I think that we can only truly make a change in this volatile world of the US healthcare system. The only way we can make a change is if we have more knowledgeable purchasers. And so more knowledgeable purchasers doesn't mean just selling TrueScripts. That means educating on the industry as a whole. So we're really excited to do that. I think our team does a really good job of that. So reach out. We'd be happy to chat, dive into, any of these subjects in greater depth, or, if not, sometimes I have really cheesy jokes. if you're just bored.
Don't even know how to respond to that one. I was going to offer you up as a fishing guide, but we're gonna hold that one back. So, all right, you guys, I appreciate y'all being here. We have a September fireside chat, and this one I think is going to be interesting. We're going to put our operations team and contracting team in the fireside room and let them talk about what they're seeing, the trends they're seeing, the problems they're solving, and what they foresee being the next frontier in the RBP space. Shouldn't be very salesy. It should be just down to earth. They'll be there for questions as well. So I know many of you have plans with us, or maybe considering having a plan. Good opportunity to get to the people that are on the front line. So join us on the 24th. That'll be at 11 o'clock Pacific. There'll be emails going out to register for that, but hope to see you all there. So Allie, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. And we'll see everybody back in September. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.